you're gonna get free this time. Falling into a blue sky mind. Came to me in that song, my friend.
Hello, Deb Air here. You're just about to embark on the episode of What Types of Masks Do You Wear? And what came across to me once I was done recording is to actually pull back a little bit before we began as a way to introduce the mask archetype through the eyes of history in a way that could allow you some room and play of how you may utilize the mask archetypes to support your journey. The history of mask wearing and using masks in many different ways spans over thousands of years and through many, many different cultures. Like in African culture, they would use masks to summon a deity. So it was being able to become a bridge to the divine in different ways, to become a channel, let's say. That's a very specific way to use masks in a way that broadens the landscape into the sacred, into the spiritual world, into the invisible world, and using a mask as a channel or a way to embody the divine. In Greek culture, they used masks a lot for plays and theater and allowed mask wearing to be a way that the audience could connect more with the role that the person was playing, especially if it was just men or just women, being able to expand what the audience could imagine that character to be by using a mask that brought that character to life more potently. And in Japanese theater, they used very specific stylized masks that would either embodies ranges of emotion, whether it's anger or sadness or joy. And also they would use it kind of similarly, I think, to ancient Africa, but in a way that they would also be a bridge for the supernatural. So how the supernatural may move and breathe and express, and using very specific kinds of expressions of masks would help them do that. There's also the carnival masks in Europe, in the Venetian carnival mask era, where they would use masks to empower themselves to be able to lift the mask, let's say, or the role of culture, and be able to perform or express in ways that were not confined by society. So there was this sense of freedom that it gave to them in a carnival to be able to be somebody that normally they either were not allowed to be or they were not allowing themselves to be in order to fit into culture. On a psychological way, or symbolism, I should say, Carl Jung talked about, and I talk about a little bit of this in the episode of the dichotomy, that like masks can empower in a way that they can allow somebody to practice certain places within that you don't show as often, that you may need to strengthen so they can be expanding in that way and allow for an avenue or a bridge to grow into more of who we are. And they're also used as a protective or performance, right? We might have masks in which we utilize and more because we are accepted when we are this person, when we hold this persona. So in that realm, and this is kind of the realm that we're going to sink into in this episode, is how can you begin to discover the parts in yourself that are hidden based on where you feel like you may protect yourself, or where are you performing, which is usually still a form of protection. Where are you performing to fit in? And also, how can you look at the dichotomy of that in the other end of the mask archetype, where you can grab more empowering masks that are less utilized in your life, certain behaviors, certain emotions, certain ways of communicating that you can use masks that will help bridge that to empower you to gain strengths in areas that have been less practiced in your life. So, with that, know as you begin to endeavor in the practice of using masks or the archetype of mask, that this is rich. We've been using masks for thousands of years. So, really bringing in the ancient wisdom that exists within you merely by you being part of the ancestral lineage of humanity. Enjoy, and I'll see you in the episode. Hello and welcome back to You Mean the Elephant. This is Deb Air. And if my voice, well, if you can see me, you get it. But if you can't see me and my voice sounds a little muffled, it's because I happen to be wearing a very cool mask right now. I thought, I don't know how this subject came up to talk about. I think I'm going to take it off. Oh, now I got post-mask messy hair. Anyway, it feels apropos because it's the end of October. Happened to be an 80+ degree day today, is why I'm sitting outside speaking to you. And it's close to Halloween. And before I was even thinking about that, something came up about masks as an archetype and as a way that we can become aware of the things that are very easy to hide because of the persona we hold every day, the behaviors we have, the way that people know us. So I thought, let's talk about masks, both the hidden ones and the ways that we hide, and the ones that we can use in a way that allows us to amplify our self-awareness and allows ourselves to discover more parts of our truer being. So here we go. I'm going to put this one on. Okay. I'm going to try not to keep putting on masks. Oh, this is so funny too, because I always talk about this. Like things come in and it's like, okay, this is what we're going to talk about. And then one of my dear friends texts me today and she's like, there's this theater is selling like all these costumes and masks. And I was like, oh my God. So that's when I went and I grabbed these masks and I thought, how perfect that today I'm recording a podcast on masks. So I think the best place to start with our exploration on masks is to define, what am I talking about when I'm saying archetype of mask? As I already mentioned, we can use masks to empower ourselves, or we can unconsciously be wearing masks that are hiding ourselves. I forget where I read this, but I like to consider masks being something that is, if you could meditate on what's called the original face. And the original face is the face that you were before your mom and your dad were born. I think it's kind of interesting to imagine, who was I? Who am I? Right? That's always the big question, or that is a bigger question of the questions we ask in the broader spectrum of our life. So masks can be physical, like I just showed you. We'll talk about that a little bit later. How can you practice and maybe create some masks to practice and have some fun with it? I think it's quite common for us to be wearing masks. And I think that the trickier ones are the ones that we're not aware of. So I think the first part of exploring masks is considering, how do you recognize if you're wearing one? One of the first things we can do is ask ourselves a question. Like if you're in a conversation, let's say, and you leave that conversation and you're like, oh, I should have said that. Why didn't I say that? Or, oh my God, I just froze when they asked me that question. Those are beautiful indications that you are wearing a mask in that moment that didn't allow you to access a truer version of yourself to respond to that question. That's the part that can be confusing because a lot of times we're not aware of it. So today is really about, how can we bring forward some of the things that we're less aware of on how we are wearing masks and how that may prevent us from really expressing what we want. So asking the questions, who am I being right now? What I said, did that feel like
what I meant to say? Does the behavior that I just had feel aligned with my deeper self? Or am I performing for someone else's approval? That's really a big one. Let's face it, everybody wants to be loved. I want to say this, and I think there's a paradox in here, like that everybody really wants to be seen, but I do feel that we are petrified simultaneously of being seen. And especially in this regard is where I think the hidden masks are. I think there's ingrained masks that we wear, like I'm a helper, I'm a caregiver, I'm a nice person, I'm a do-gooder, I'm a workhorse. I think what can be tricky is when we have a mask that we wear that when you hear yourself, well, that's just who I am, maybe looking into that and asking like, who are you? Who are you being? What does that mean to you when you say, well, that's who I am? This is another way to go into inner reflection. We all have muscles that we use that get really strong. And then we have muscles that we don't use and they become atrophied. And sometimes the roles we play based on our conditioning, what has been deemed acceptable or appropriate to be, becomes the main mask. It's almost like that mask overshadows all the other places. And it can really limit allowing yourself to discover more of who you are, especially if some of those places of who you are that's wanting to come to the surface doesn't really fit in line with the main mat. So notice if you were to say, yeah, this is who I am, and list like 3 things, you're going to be able to find what your main role or personality masks are. There's no need to judge them. It's a great thing to be able to name them. And then I think there's also more subtle masks, and that's what we're going to talk about to some degree today is what are some of those subtleties where when you're in company with a certain person, do you put on a mask because so does the context or the people you're with change the mask that you're wearing? And to some degree, it's going to, right? However, here's the thing, and I'm just playing this out with y'all, is that I feel that the more we can recognize what our role playing, what I'm calling personality masks are, and then also notice some of the subtleties, like in this next week, can you check, oh, what part of you shows up in this relationship here? What part of you shows up when you go to work? What part of you shows up when you're at home? And just notice the differences, and that will give you cues. And then the other cue will be if you're feeling like there's some incongruence to what I'm feeling and what I'm expressing, it's just saying that, oh, I wore a mask. It doesn't mean that you have the answer right away, but it's a first step in. And then asking the question, like, who am I being right now? Is my behavior empowering or is it limiting? And is this that I am trying to avoid rejection or disappointment? Or am I trying not to disappoint somebody else? Try to ask the question, who am I being right now? And that will get you in the doorway of what mask you're wearing. And checking in with your body is a beautiful thing. In a situation, if you're feeling your neck is tight and your shoulders are, or your chest feels tight, or you have a knot in your stomach, there is a part of you that is hiding. So that's more of a hiding mask. There's a part of you that might need to pull out some other masks so that you can practice maybe having enough courage. Let's say it's a courageous mask. So I'm going to go through different masks, like common masks that we wear, and from like the hidden masks to more empowering masks. And let's have fun with it and see where we can go with this and see how you exploring your own masks, asking the questions, checking in with your body. Also, if you do feel the incongruence in a moment and you leave, like I said, and you go, gosh, I didn't say the thing I wanted to say, check in with what is the emotion underneath that, trying to tag what mask you're wearing. So let's say it's the nice person mask. What's underneath that? What is the emotion? What are we trying to hide or what are we trying to protect? So there's empowering masks that help us expand more into who we are and discover more who we are. And then there's the hidden mask or protective masks that are really protecting something within ourselves. And again, some of that is conscious and a lot of it is not. So let me go through some of the top hidden masks. One that we're pretty good at is like, it's the everything is fine mask. As soon as like someone says, I'm fine, you may want to pause. And that doesn't mean that in moments that everything can't be fine. And in fact, it doesn't mean that in moments, if you don't feel safe, and that's the only mask you know that keeps you safe, like everything is fine, it's okay. You don't have to judge yourself for it. This is about the first step of awareness of what mask you're wearing and what's underneath the mask. So in the case of everything is fine, that hides some aspect of vulnerability, right? Some aspect of discomfort or the emotions that you're feeling and feeling safe enough to express them and be with them. And sometimes that's even with ourselves. We'll have emotion bubble up and then all of a sudden it goes, and you can feel the neurological wiring that brings it back in to the non-expressed space. The challenge with that is that when we let these hidden masks remain and we don't become more familiar with what's underneath in this case, everything is fine mask, then we keep repeating everything is fine. And we keep building, whether it's anxiety, whether it's exhaustion because we're holding so much in, whether it's resentment, because then we can start projecting onto others because we're like, well, I'm never really seen. Well, are you actually showing yourself? We all can play roles. So when we're projecting, whenever I feel that, I always ask myself, what is happening with me? What is it that I'm feeling underneath that projection? Another mask is the nice person mask. What the nice person mask can be hiding is we're angry, we might be frustrated, but if we're a nice person, it's like, okay, I'm just gonna put my nice person mask on because I'm not allowed to feel anger. I don't understand my anger, so I don't know how to express it. It could also be that we are unclear of our own boundaries when we're using the nice person mask, when we're being nice in place. So we can be nice. So all of these masks can be used empowering or they can be hidden, but these are just the common ones where we hide. And that's why I'm bringing these up specifically, just so you can travel through with me in this discussion and take your own inventory and notice like your family members, because I think if you can recognize what mask somebody may be wearing, I think that that allows and not take it personally and even understand maybe what the emotions that person might be hiding. I think that can add some more compassion within yourself to the conversation. The nice person mask could also be hiding unmet needs. And it's very interesting how I feel like I've shared this story on here before. How many times, like, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay as a mask, right? Everything's fine. And sometimes we have this real habit of combining everything's fine and I'm a nice person. Now, if you're someone who doesn't resonate with that, we've got ones for you too. So there's everything's fine. I'm a nice person. So one time, one of my students slash friends, we were getting something out of a car and she accidentally stepped on my toe, or no, excuse me, I accidentally stepped on her toe. And I said, oh my God, I'm sorry. Did I step on your toe? And she said, no, it's okay. But it was like this high pitch, like, it's okay. And in that moment, she was wearing a mask to hide her true feelings because she didn't want to admit that, I stepped on her toe because like she was wearing the nice person mask. And that means like everything's okay. So even it sounds weird to have an unmet need, like saying yes to that question. It's so simple, but it's an example of how, like, she didn't say, you did step on my toe, ha ha ha, I'm okay, or it's fine. Like that it is really fine. So that's what I mean. Like everything's fine can be the truest mask. And I want us to start thinking of masks also as a way of unmasking. And there's the paradox again. But in this case, they're so subtle and they're so conditioned that it's very hard to recognize them. Look within yourself. So I'm not saying don't be a nice person. I'm not saying that sometimes you're just fine. I'm saying, do you overuse that one? And what is it protecting in you? And how can you be, let's say, with your anger, be and tag some of your unmet needs and be able to lovingly take accountability for maybe what you need? And this is skipping ahead, but you could put on a courageous mask and ask somebody you trust for help. That would be an example of how you could begin to recognize what's happening and then also use a different mask to be able to help that like nice person mask soften a little bit so that you can have some of your needs met, so that you can express your anger, that you can feel more vulnerable, but feel the strength in that vulnerability, which can add to becoming closer in your relationships, having more intimacy. Another common hidden mask, again, these are going to seem paradoxical because we can use them for empowerment, but another common one is confident, successful mask. I know in the chiropractic world, in the first half of my career, we would always talk about like, how many people did you help and what are the life-saving stories? And it was all like this way of trying to keep up with the Joneses, trying to feel like you're enough. So this confident, successful mask can cover up insecurity to feel like you're enough, or that fear of failure. So like the difference is if I have two colleagues saying, oh my gosh, our numbers are up, the business is amazing, people are finding life-changing experiences, and I'm having a down month, am I going to put on my success mask and say, oh yeah, like me too? Or am I going to connect with the vulnerability of the fear of not doing as well as them, the fear of failure or of inadequacy? And can I actually be genuine and be happy for them? And can I say, wow, I'm not doing so well. Do you have any suggestions? That could be bringing a more authentic mask to the table. And sometimes we just need a few seconds to grab a mask. We don't have to be courageous all the time. We can use it and go, okay, I'm putting on my courageous mask now. And that can get you through a moment. And that can begin to alchemize some of those energies that have been untapped. The other, I don't know anything about this mask, but the other common hidden mask is the independent mask. Sometimes we wear that because we have been hurt and disappointed. So that if I'm independent and I can take care of myself, then I'm not going to be hurt, right? I can't be let down if I can just rely on myself. But it also hides the fact that we may desire companionship. We may desire more intimacy. And if I'm wearing my independent mask all the time, then I'm hiding that I would actually love support sometimes, that I would love to sink into deeper connection. I was teasing because I've been looking in my life and seeing those places where I've almost become over independent. And I love being resourceful. And I also think our resourcefulness comes in community as well. And that's where I'm leaning into. But also on a personal level, it's very important for me to develop meaningful connections. And sometimes I have found where I have been, and I've definitely evolved on this. I brag, and there's so much more, but where I've become so role played, masked, independent, that it's actually, I think, prevented some more meaningful connections because people are like, well, she doesn't need anything. She's good. I think another really common hidden mask is the caregiver helper mask. That's like the nice person mask. We're hiding our own needs, our own desires, and sometimes we're hiding our burnout. I talk to my staff about this because we, as roles in the world and in community, my staff and I are in a caregiver role, not just caregiver, but that is a really potent, authentic persona we offer. And I think that what can happen is when we are in the caregiver mask too much, or we're doing it to avoid another expression, then we get burnt out because we're constantly trying to serve everybody, but we have taken ourselves out of the circle of that care, out of the circle of the service. So I think it's a great thing to check in. Am I being authentic right now? Is there a response that could feel more clear? check in with your body. Is it tense? Are you at work? Well, can you step away? Can you go to the bathroom? Can you check in with your body? Can you do some breath work that allows you to go, oh, okay, yeah, I need to in this moment. I actually need to look at this person and say, thank you so much, and let them know that I need to do this other thing and have a seat and I can take care of them later. Or it's bringing more consciousness into the places where we commonly use these masks that become more unconscious, so that we need to tap in. And I think we can layer masks. I think we can wear different masks and practice different ways. I, in particular, remember this one Halloween, speaking of Halloween coming up, and I went like as a 70s dancer and I had like white boots and all the things. I definitely looked like a rockette. And I had the best time, one of the best times of my life, because I embodied that mask. I became that rockette dancer. And with that, I had all these other masks. I had courageous, whimsical, vivacious. And it didn't mean that I didn't have those places in me, but wow, wearing that mask, wearing that costume, becoming that persona, role playing that. And that's what I love about Halloween. All of a sudden, you give yourself permission to be somebody totally different if you want to. And you can, like an actor, you can embody that. My question for you with Halloween coming up, what costume might be an empowering costume that allows you to dip into a place that is less practiced for you, that could be a lot of fun, that could give you permission, like I was as a rockette? I'm going to go into some empowering masks. One would be the courageous mask, which I already talked about. Again, we don't necessarily need to be that all the time, but can you decide to just put it on in that moment? What that can help is bringing out in a moment a little bit more strength, a little bit more resilience, a little bit more boldness, and a willingness to take a risk in the moment. We may not feel like we want to risk ourselves all the time, but if we can put a courageous mask on, and I'm going to put my authentic mask on, and maybe even acting it out a little bit. What does courage look like, stand like, breathe like? What does authentic look like, breathe like, and move like? Which brings me to the other one, which is the authentic mask. The paradox about the authentic mask is it's actually an act of unmasking. It's a way of saying, wow, I'm taking vulnerability. I'm allowing vulnerability to be welcome here. And I'm allowing what feels the truest to me right now to be spoken. It's very powerful because where this is goes into the wanting to be seen. This is our role. This is our part in allowing ourselves to be seen. We play a role in that. So when you can slip on your authentic mask, even for a moment, or practice with somebody that you feel very safe with, and even say, this is what we're going to do, it can be really fun and also really powerful. Because when we're not used to being bold enough to be honest with ourselves and with others, it can sometimes first come across almost harsh because we're trying hard. So be kind to yourself when you're wearing an empowering mask or trying on an empowering mask for the first time. There's the leader mask. Some of you may not feel like you're a leader or you're worthy of leading. Sometimes if we can just put that on for a moment, we can gain more confidence. We can tap into our capacity to inspire others, because a real leader is somebody that does that. They can inspire and sponsor and listen and light the way while you're lighting the way for yourself. The creative, playful mask is a great mask if you're feeling like you haven't been laughing much. Laughing, I think, is the highest form of emotion that we can have that can bring us into a place of divinity. I think I've done on here like 30 seconds of pure laughter. And I suggest maybe pausing this right now and doing that, putting your hands on your belly and doing a 30-second. I don't know if that was 30 seconds. It can feel so silly. And what happens with laughter is even if you are faking it it is contagious. And all of a sudden, it brings this playful, creative mask to the surface. And I think that if you're in an environment that tends to, I hear a lot of people go, oh my God, it's like work, it gets really dreary or it's too serious, then you can try on your playful creative mask and bring more flirt to the moment, bring more aliveness, bring more vigor or vivaciousness to a moment. And this is what I mean about the laughter that can activate your own joy, your own spontaneity, your own creative expression. Because when we're honing that in and we're have a focus mask on and we have our serious mask on, which we need at times, but we're wearing that too much and we're not using our playful or creative mask, we can feel flat. We can lie flat and we feel like we're getting disconnected from our creativity. And our creativity is what keeps us alive. I have a whole episode on creativity. If you haven't listened, is worth listening. I believe that creativity is not just our birthright, it's what we came here to embody. And the playful creative mask can really help in helping unlock that. And then there's the wise mask. And I think the wise mask can be used to pause. I was just talking to somebody, a few people about this last week, about can you take a pause before you react to let something else come in? So putting on a wise mask could allow somebody to do that. If you're like, okay, I'm in a response. And even if you're in a response, you have to leave the room because you don't have the energy or bandwidth in the moment, like put the wise mask on, put the guru and allow the presence to come in and imagine you are the guru of you in that moment and you have the perfect thing to say. You have all the space you need. And that can really allow you to tap into your inner wisdom, your inner guidance, your insight. So, this is a personal story about learning Spanish. I'm a perpetual Spanish student. And I remember when I first started learning, I would judge other people that were learning and that they seemed to like take on this persona of speaking Spanish. And I was like, well, that's not how they really sound. And then as I got more and more into Spanish and went more and more to Costa Rica and started to marinate in the culture, I realized that not only would I remember Spanish better, but I could be in the flow of the understanding it when I actually took on the Deborah persona. And it wasn't that I wasn't being me, I was activating a new part of me. This is what comes with learning and embodiment and evolution of self and growth. It's like the things that we used to judge, we can look and go, oh my goodness, I finally gave myself permission to be Deborah, the Spanish speaking woman. And I'm discovering another part of myself. And I could see how I was starting to be able to, and this is the great thing about practicing using masks, like consciously choosing that, is that I feel like I can slide in and out. Like if I'm talking to my teacher, I can go right into that. And if I all of a sudden speak English, it goes into more of the English persona or mask of Deb. And then there's many minutia, finite hybrids of that too. That was a great realization for me. We're so taught to judge if something looks different, that someone is all of a sudden acting different when maybe they're just exploring different parts of who they are. And if you find yourself doing that, I would ask yourself, like, what are you maybe not allowing yourself to be or to express? Because I think that we become petrified of being judged. And we have an episode on that, like you will be judged. But this is about your ability to use the archetype of mask to play with what parts you can wake up in yourself. And sometimes the more outrageous, the better, especially if you're doing it maybe at a party, or maybe you have an accountability partner or a friend that you want to practice with. These are incredible ways to be like, okay, what is the part that is so not me? Like, I'm not a dancer. I am. I love to dance, but let's say I get stiff on the dance floor and I don't move. Okay, I'm going to put on my like Rockette, or I'm going to put on my, what was that movie with Channing Tatum, Magic Mike? It's like, can you put on a mask and have some fun with it? This brings me to how I want to close. So within your own work, and you can journal this too, is trying to find the hidden masks. Start with asking, who was I being right there? What mask was I wearing? What part of me was protecting myself? What emotions was I trying to protect? See if you can tag that. Check in with your body. If you feel tense, you can ask yourself the same questions like, where is this tension coming from? What am I protecting? I think it's really important to give yourself the honor of asking what you're protecting, because that just opens up an ability for you to discover more and be able to use masks as a bridge to find more comfort with yourself and find greater ability to explore places that are less explored, or even places that you judge in yourself the most. One of the things that I did at a program that I co-facilitated is we got a bunch of baseball caps and we put different words on them. One was wise, one was courageous, one was powerful, one was omniscient, one was hilarious, one was loving, one was calm, whatever it was. And we would, what do you call that when you get up and then you blow the whistle, whatever that game is. And you would have to be and act out whatever hat you were wearing, which AKA mask. So whatever mask you chose to put on. So if I was putting on the courageous mask, I would walk around and I would embody the courageousness. If I was sensual, I would embody the sensuality. It was really intriguing to do this in a group because there are people that like froze with some of the hats on them because there was such a gap. And that's a beautiful thing to notice. Like sometimes you can take something that seems so far out your scope, but I also suggest doing little things. Like if you want to be a little bit more courageous, do a courageous hat. But I will say this is if you do something more outrageous could be a mask, and you feel frozen, and you can do this in the mirror, it's a beautiful time to check in with what is happening underneath and just asking your question, what am I protecting right now? So you can go out and get some masks and write on them. You could decorate them. You could do this with a friend. You could do this with your family. That could be amazing when the family's having some difficulty and people are fighting, or in your relationship or your kids. And you can be like, okay, I used to have little finger puppets, actually, I'm remembering, with my son and my soul daughter. And when things were heated, we would get our little finger puppets and we would put on these personas that would give us the bravery to have more authentic conversation where people could be heard and we could move to somewhere else where we found some alchemy with us. It's funny, all these things that I'm remembering. So can you either design some masks and maybe put whatever mask that is, or get some baseball caps? And if you want to do this with yourself, you can get 3 masks, get empowering masks. Maybe also you could grab like 3 masks that have felt hidden for you. So if there is the everything's fine, you could wear that mask and really lay into everything's fine and feel your body and feel what part doesn't feel true to that. It could be also a very interesting thing to find some of the hidden places. So I suggest doing it with, like I said, when I did the finger puppets, it was really incredible. We just had them in a dish and we would pull them out like, now's the time. You can even activate it as a ritual, and you can do it in the mirror with yourself. And you can look up if you're not sure. And I haven't mentioned ones that are really drawing you in. You can look up like, what are some empowering emotions and what are some vulnerable emotions? Like anger could be one. That could be a hidden mask, and you could get an anger mask where you could allow yourself in a safe space. So if it's already in an environment that you're putting on masks, then you're going to be held with compassion and safety in, let's say, the anger mask, and you can allow yourself to be angry, move angry, make the sounds of anger. I think utilizing masks in the mirror or with other people consciously is powerful to practice. I would love to hear what masks you're creating. And I think also in this Halloween time, even if you're somebody that doesn't dress up normally, may you use this inspiration of using masks to put on a mask for Halloween and act it out like you are completely embodying that persona in the moment. And how does it feel? What does it bring you? How do people respond? How can you use masks in your life that will empower you and allow you to discover more of who you are and allow you to have fun and discover more of who you are with each other, with the people that you love? As always, thank you so much for taking this ride with me on what masks are you wearing? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Until next time. And now, Trevor Hall
Found
with Blue Sky Mind.
through the body. It's in and through the body.